We've been getting a few interesting trailers for the upcoming animated films of this year, and they've gotten people talking. A lot. I'm specifically talking about the trailers to Elemental, Teenage Kraken, and Wish. People have been very down on all these projects, I think, mostly Wish, but the other two have also been getting a surprising amount of hate. From general audiences, from animation people, and of course when someone says something along the lines of, "I'm not looking forward to this," that ends up leading to a backlash, and it becomes a cycle. Right now, I'm working on some big projects, most notably Animated Atrocities Episode 200, but I definitely don't want to leave you guys hanging for so long, and I thought that it might be fun to give you my thoughts and opinions on each of these trailers. Especially because I think that I'm more positive on them than most people. Most of the trailers, at least. You see, I know a secret that not everyone else does. Trailers for animated movies, hell, animated projects in general, are universally bad. It doesn't matter if the movie is bad, good, or somewhere in between. I don't think that I've seen a trailer for an animated movie that wasn't abysmal. My favorite trailer for an animated movie is Bebe's Kids, where the only thing they could say to sell the film was, "It's animation." You have to read between the lines if you want to get anything out of an animation trailer. So let's do just that. Now, keep in mind, these are all previews. They're not going to be my full opinions on any one of these movies. They're not even my first impressions upon seeing the movie. As I write this script, the movies haven't come out yet, and I could be absolutely wrong with all of my predictions. However, when they do come out, I will give my full opinion to each and every one of them, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. We'll start with Elemental. Before I even begin with this, I do have to have a little bit of a nitpick. And I know that this is kind of a controversial opinion. The fact that this movie is called Elemental bothers me, and this also applies to Wish. Is anyone else getting sick of these one-word titles for animated films? Sometimes it's not a problem, but in other times, it makes them exceptionally hard to Google and do research on. I have to believe that this naming convention actually hurts the prospects of most of these films, unless they become a powerhouse like Frozen. No, the other Frozen. You're a dick, you know what movie I'm talking about. If this does have any effect at all, it's going to hurt Wish a lot more than Elemental, because you've also got Wish Dragon and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Anyway, nitpick. Elemental. This one has 2 trailers out right now, so we'll start with the first one. It takes place on a subway, and I believe that this has done a major disservice to the movie. In a sense, Elemental reminds me of Zootopia, a fantasy world with a bunch of different people with all vastly different physical needs. And when we walk into that city, we see different districts and even different pathways, like many of the hamster pipes that take the smaller rodent citizens around. From a subway train, we really only see the air people sitting on the ceiling. It doesn't give us a good grasp of this world, which is clearly very important to the concept of the film. And I know this because we're more focused on the aspects of the world and the different kinds of people instead of our main character Ember, who is even wearing a hood for most of the trailer. We do get brief glimpses out of the window, but that's about it, and you can't really glean anything from them. Ember just walks to the back of the subway and meets the male lead Wade. And let's bring up what everyone else brings up. People say that he kinda looks like Osmosis Jones, and I mean, well, they're both anthropomorphic blue blobs. There's going to be a similarity no matter what you do. I'm not too harsh on that, really. 3D movies in general tend to have very similar character designs, and it's nice to have something that's not the bog standard Disney human that we've been getting in most films for a while now. Elemental's second trailer seems to address some of my complaints. However, it's worse received for some reason. We start out by seeing some shots of Element City. This trailer's problem is that the cuts are way too quick, not allowing you to take in any of it, so we'll be using screenshots here. As for the city itself, it definitely looks visually interesting. You can tell what building is for the Earth people and the Water people, and we could probably infer that the Fire people either aren't common in the city or have their own special district. I should mention that this film at least seems to be advertised as a romance film. In a city where fire, water, land, and air residents live together, a fiery young woman and a go-with-the-flow guy are about to discover something elemental, how much they actually have in common. I wouldn't be surprised if this film, like Zootopia, also tries to do themes of prejudice. Either way, it gives me a lot of Romeo and Juliet vibes. Unfortunately for this screenshot in particular, the city is not forming its own unique identity. It plays it too close to what we'd expect out of a utopian-type city. Instead of buildings that are covered with bushes, I would have had the buildings literally made out of plants, for example. In the stadium, we see some clouds playing a sport, which is definitely an interesting and exciting bit of world building. Three-dimensional sports can give you all kinds of amazing visuals, especially in animation. From this Helium Boulevard sign, we could probably expect a lot of background gags involving the periodic elements, rather than the traditional elements.
Earth can be a little seedy.
Nothing weird going on here.
Just a little pruning.
This is why all animated trailers are bad. They either ruin the best joke in the movie by driving it into the ground, or they use the worst joke and make the whole movie look cringe. The latter is happening here.
Water is always getting into something.
In the school, we can see some puns in the background. Find your flow. Belief in yourself. This kind of stuff makes me less excited for the movie, but it might be intentional. The shot takes place in a school after all. I will say though, I do like the almost castle look of this building. It kind of feels like what Onward schools should have looked like. I have opinions on that film, but we'll deal with that later. The fireworks in the fire segment show this movie is probably going to be very colorful, and I like that. I cannot wait for the parents and idiots on the internet to complain about that shot. A baby drinking lighter fluid.
But we all live by one simple rule.
Elements cannot mix.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be doing the Romeo and Juliet prejudice thing. And hey, I know that kind of stuff gets a lot of people to groan. But you never know. This is Pixar. And even though they're not at the height of their game anymore, they can still pull out great works. I still love Soul and came around on Turning Red. If I am right though, this film is going to have to do a lot to not be in Zootopia's shadow, the way that Strange World was in Encanto's shadow.
Why doesn't anyone get to tell you what you can do in your life?
As for me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of romance in general, comedy, fantasy, or otherwise. So I was probably never going to be excited for this specific film to begin with.
Why do they even have these?
Who knows?
It's, not a good sign when they're questioning their own world building in the trailer of the movie. We see Ember jumping along some crystals, and crystals definitely allow you to get some really cool visuals, especially since our main character can apparently change color. I'm not too keen on the story or the premise, but this might be a very visually exciting film. Also, we see Ember on a motorcycle, and motorcycles are cool. As far as predictions go, I think I might like Ember, but I probably will find Wade a little bit annoying. He just gives me animated movie comic relief vibes. Then we get into Wade's home.
We got two kids that are swimming around here somewhere. Orca! Follow!
Remember what I said about jokes at animated films. In terms of cringe jokes though, that's kinda sorta clever, I guess.
I've been trying to fill my father's shoes, but I never once asked what I wanted to do.
And this sounds like it might be the biggest deal breaker for some. It might even be the deal breaker for me. We all know what that sounds like. A story about generational trauma. Like Encanto. Like Turning Red. Like Strange World. It's something we've seen 3 times already to diminishing effect each time. It really is getting old, and it's getting older faster than the twist villains in my view. That topic specifically is probably its own video though. At the end, we see that the father is not too keen on his daughter's new boyfriend. So, preview verdict on Elemental. I think this movie is going to be B tier for Pixar. Like, it doesn't strike me as a Cars or a Brave, but I highly doubt that this is going to be a Ratatouille or Inside Out. I can imagine this might be one of those films that some people are really, really into, and other people find just okay. It's a film that's probably going to need to hit you in just the right way. The trailer, I think, needed to showcase more about the world and forwarded the concept a bit, because the characters themselves, while they don't seem bad at all, they don't seem especially deep or unique. They seem likable enough though. I want to be cautiously optimistic with Elemental. What's next? Ah yes, the DreamWorks entry, Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. Does anyone else think that it might be more than just a coincidence that DreamWorks released a movie making fun of The Little Mermaid? In the same year, Disney remade The Little Mermaid. Even if that wasn't intentional, I do think it's a funny joke by accident. Now, here's a little secret you might not know about DreamWorks. DreamWorks doesn't exist. It's actually 2 animation companies in a trench coat. One of them makes absolute masterpieces that can make even the Disney Renaissance blush. The other one makes pig crap for babies. So, right on the face of it, Ruby Gillman is a wild card no matter which way you slice it. Let's start with the art style. A lot of people are not a fan of this one's. It does look a little like Illumination, but at this point I am starving for any kind of stylization in 3D films. It also lets me know right up front that this film is going to avoid one of DreamWorks' biggest weaknesses. I don't know how to put this delicately, so I'll be blunt. DreamWorks cannot render humans. Like, go through their library. You've got the How to Train Your Dragon films, and the humans look alright in Shrek, but in almost everything else, a good movie or a bad movie, the humans tend to look off. Monsters vs. Aliens is by far the worst example of this, but it's also a problem that permeates The Boss Baby, B-Movie, Rise of the Guardians, Over the Hedge, and so on. Here, many of the background humans do look off, but they get the designs appealing where it counts. I love this character's design. She definitely invokes Ariel, intentionally I'd imagine, while she also looks like a very expressive high school mean girl. She looks like she might actually be one of the better DreamWorks villains with how she really uses the power that she has. That is, in my opinion, the hallmark of a really great villain. I bring her up first because we see a lot more of her in this trailer than we do of Ruby, the main character. Her human design is alright. I just wish that we got more of a chance to actually see it. And, maybe clear up a few things.
I know your secret. You're a Kraken hiding as a human.
I really gotta go now.
And soon, everyone will know the truth.
She doesn't look like she's hiding very well. I don't know how to bring this up, but she's, blue. Very blue. Blue dabba dee dabba die. Now, her actual Kraken form is great. Not only does it look creative as hell, but it shows that they're really going to be playing with bioluminescence, which is going to make this film a little bit unique in that regard. Speaking of which, let's talk about the visuals that aren't the characters. We got a lot of really breathtaking scenes underwater. I wish that the trailer held on some of these a little bit longer. Look at all that neon. This might be really cool to look at in theaters. And also these whales. Those whales are plushie worthy. If you're not sold on how this movie looks, just remember that it's an improvement from the last time that DreamWorks took us on an undersea adventure. That being said, this is one of those trailers that reveals too much. We learned that Ruby is going to have all kinds of cool powers, which is definitely exciting. But at the end of the trailer, both Ruby and the mermaid are engaged in a huge kaiju battle. It looks as cool as hell, and I love these designs. But doesn't it kind of look like the climax of the film? Like something you're not supposed to find out happens until you're an hour into the runtime? It definitely excites me, but if the internet has taught me anything at all, I'm the only person on Earth who doesn't care about spoilers. Most people want to have a little bit of surprise going in, and this probably would have been a cooler reveal actually in the movie. Now, let's talk about writing, which tends to be DreamWorks' strength over Disney. This film definitely feels like it's going to be in line with some of the best of those. DreamWorks is a very good at outcast stories. It's their specialty. Most famously Shrek, obviously, but you've also got Megamind, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon. Their best work is all about the outcast, and it's a great setup. Mermaids, we've been told are pretty and precious, are the real monsters, and while Krakens, we've been told to be terrified of, are actually protectors. I like the concept here. It's not the most unique, but neither is Fat Loser Tries Kung Fu. I trust DreamWorks on this. However, we need to talk about the humor in this trailer.
I love you so much! Love you too, Rando!
That's Megamind.
I love you, Metro Man.
And I love you, random citizen.
You can't fool me, DreamWorks. I know that movie didn't do so well, but I saw it. I know what you're doing. You're funnier than this. You don't need to steal from yourself. As for Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, I'm optimistic about this one. Of the three we're talking about today, this is the film that I'm actually most looking forward to. So let's talk about the last one, Wish. So the trailer for Wish has been controversial for its art style. A lot of people keep comparing it to Paperman, negatively, saying that the style looked better way back when, a decade ago, and that Wish looks like a video game that wanted to be cel-shaded but couldn't commit, or that it has some kind of filter over it. As such, it's become the most hated of the trailers we'll be talking about today. Before we begin though, I do think that I have to reiterate, starved for stylization. Anyway, Paperman is really only a superficial comparison. Here's something that you might not have noticed. Paperman is in monochrome. Wish, while it is going for a similar 2D and 3D hybridization, it's kind of like saying that Spirited Away and Winnie the Pooh kind of look like each other because they're both pure 2D animation. Honestly, I think that Wish looks pretty cool. At least in stills. It's meant to look like a storybook, which I think really fits for the semi-2D look. The backgrounds are something to pay attention to here. Right from the opening, we can see a very unique sky. Like it's a flat painting, and the buildings look something like they're straight out of a pop-up book. I think the scene where Star, the star, is bringing these flowers to life is the best showcase of this movie's style. It's almost like a theater production in a sense. Minimal backgrounds focus on the foreground. And most of the characters really do fit this style. There is one major exception though, and I think that's why a lot of people have an issue with this style in the trailer. And that's the goat, Valentino. I don't know if it's the colors or the movements, but he just doesn't seem to fit in with everything else. And it's a problem for the trailer since you see him and you see him move the second that you see Asha, our main character. I'm guessing that he moves or looks differently because he's the comic relief character, and traditionally they don't move like other characters in the film. It's a bit more distracting here though because this movie is heavily stylized. One of the most stylized Disney films in quite a while. This might be a distracting problem with the full movie, or it could be something you could get used to. I'm guessing it's going to depend on who you are. The only other problem I've noticed with the animation is the lip syncing seems kind of off, at least here.
What was that? Whoa, what are you doing? Valentino, don't eat that!
But since Valentino's lip syncing immediately afterwards is fine, I'm going to assume that that's an effect of the trailer mixing. Sometimes trailers remix things, because trailers have their own music separate from the movie, usually. Every shot is framed very nicely, I do want to say. I think this is going to be a very cinematic, nice-looking film, which I hope carries it quite a bit. I'm going off of the animation so much because this trailer does not convey the film's premise at all. It's by far the most vague of the three we're talking about today. It's probably one of the most vague animation trailers I've ever seen. We know that our main character wishes upon a star and then a star comes down. The wish then makes the goat talk. But the trailer otherwise is so vague that I have no idea what to actually expect for this movie, which means it fails as a trailer. While I don't want to know all of the twists and the turns in the grand climactic battle, I should accurately know the film's premise from it. I know that the film is about wishes, but that's about it. We can see some interesting things. This film looks like it's going to have a villain. An actual, real, honest-to-God villain. Not a stupid twist villain or an abstract concept. An actual bad guy who has to be defeated. If you lost track, the last time that we've had a straightforward Disney villain that has a continual presence on the plot is Mother Gothel back in 2010. 2 more years and you could have considered this concept retro. The film takes place on the Iberian Peninsula, which is either Spain or Portugal, which is definitely an interesting new location. You don't see that too often in a Disney film, or in fantasy in general. It's usually England or Central Europe.
I'm talking. I am talking. Ha! Who knew my voice would be this low?
And, the movie is letting us know what kind of comic relief we're in for, right up front. Remember what I said, though. Animation trailers always make the film look more cringe than it actually is. They always put in the worst joke possible. But yeah, Wish's trailer is pretty bad. It tells us next to nothing about the film. It doesn't showcase the film's art style adequately. It doesn't establish the concept or the characters or the plot or anything. I had to look up which each of the characters' names are. All the trailer does is establish that a star makes a goat talk and we have a villain. The first one is not a selling point, and the second one shouldn't be a selling point. I do think that I have to reiterate, just because it's a bad trailer, that has no bearing on the actual film. This could be the best film that Disney ever made. I don't know. And part of the reason I don't know is because the trailer itself is so bad. At least this movie has a trailer that we're able to see, which puts it ahead of Strange World, which barely had that. I do actually really want to be optimistic about Wish. I mean, it's Disney's 100th anniversary film, and it'd be very sad if this was a bomb, especially since the main company hasn't been in a great spot lately. Encanto was fantastic, but at least part of the splash it made was because of how surprising that it was fantastic. People like to lump Disney history into certain eras. There was the Golden Age when Walt first got started, the Bronze Age after Walt died, the Renaissance starting with The Little Mermaid, and so on. Most people lump everything from Bolt onward into the quote-unquote Disney revival era. However, I think it's clear to all of us that we're not in the same era that brought us Tangled and Frozen and Zootopia. Everything after Moana feels like it's, well, to be as blunt as I can, the corporatized era, Encanto being the obvious exception. I do want Wish to be good, because, Disney's been hurting me for a while now. And if this one ends up bad, or even boring really, it would be a damn shame. I do have some hope for animation's future, especially as the industry is starting to recover from the big, very bad thing that happened, but it's clear we're still in a rocky time period.